Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is c-james-jensen, and he's here to share with us his new book, Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Now, Jim began his career as a salesman with Encyclopedia Britannica in his senior year of college. Within 7 years, he had become the international sales manager in charge of worldwide sales. At the age of 28, he became the senior vice president and CEO of Great Books of the Western World, which is a division of Encyclopedia Britannica. In the same year, this is back in 1969, Jim and his wife Jerry attended a 4-day seminar that would have an incredible impact on their lives forever. Jim ultimately became a teacher of many of the principles written within this book. So let's welcome to the show, c-james-jensen.
Well, thank you, Marianne. It's a pleasure and an opportunity to get to know you a little bit and happy to communicate with your audience. That will be fun.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about this book. I have to tell you, I was really intrigued by your book, and I've enjoyed reading it. What inspired you to write this book now?
Well, that's I'll try to make it a shorter answer than it really is, but I got off to a good start. My senior year in college, I started selling Encyclopedia Britannica and shortly became one of their top salespeople at 23. At 25, they sent my wife and I to Sydney, Australia to be in charge of sales for all of Australia and New Zealand. And at age 27, I was placed in charge of worldwide sales. And people would always say, Jim, what do you attribute to your success? And I just, used adjectives. Well, I work hard, I'm enthusiastic, da-da-da-da-da-da. But in hindsight, nothing that I ever thought would benefit them. And while we were living in Australia, a lot of our friends from Seattle said, you've got to go through this 4-day seminar called Omega. And I said, yeah, well, when we get back to the States, we'll do that. And we came back. And at the age of 27, my wife and I flew from Chicago out to San Diego and attended this 4-day seminar called Omega, taught by the founder of the company, John Boyle. And for the first time, Marianne, I really understood the principles of performance, and I understood them in a way that I knew I could impart this information constructively to people asking the question, and not just performance in our work, but in relationships, in parenting, teaching, coaching, our physical health, whatever. And at the end of the 4 days, I affectionately went up to the owner of the seminar and I poked him in the chest. His name was John Boyle. And I said, John, someday I'm going to teach your seminar and someday I'm going to own your company. And he looked at me like, yeah, right, kid. But both those things came to pass. And in the time that I was learning to teach the seminar, I used to say to John Boyle, where did you learn all this information? And all he would say is, well, I studied with a gentleman named Joseph Murphy. Well, at that time, there was no internet. There was no way I could Google Joseph Murphy. He didn't tell me he'd written a book. And it wasn't until 2004. We were living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and one of my colleagues came in and he said, Jim, I've heard you speak, and I think you might like this book. And he put a book on my desk called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. And I thought, could this be the same Joseph Murphy? And in fact, it was. And I have devoured the book. But since he wrote his book in 1963, there have been so many constructive additions to this field of thought by contemporary experts in this field. And I felt it was a tremendous opportunity to bring this book into the 21st century. Thus the title, Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind. But we have all of Murphy's original text in part 1 of the book. And then part 2 is what has happened in this field of study since then. And that's what I contribute predominantly to the book. So that's a long-winded answer to your question. But I think that your audience, if they chose to read this book, Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind, read it with an open mind of not just what it does, like in business or making money or whatever. But I've had so many people tell me how much it's assisted them in their parenting of their children, in their relationships with their significant others, what it's done in the health of their bodies. And it's really, really, really good stuff. So I always tell an audience I'm going to be very boastful when I give a speech in public. I'm going to be very boastful today about the information I'm going to share with you. But don't confuse that with my being boastful about me, because for the most part, I did not create it. I've been a very good student, but I'd like to share the genius of the others who have predominantly, created most of this information.
It sounds like you have really bridged together this information with everything that's contemporary. And you talk about relationships. I mean, everything is relationships if you really look at it. And that's what I found so appealing about your book. It's a relationship we have with others, people at work, the relationships we have with ourselves. And a lot of times people don't consider all of those to be different relationships that this book can help.
That is correct. And we talk about like self-talk. Right now, as your audience is listening to this, they're talking to themselves at the rate of 150 to 300 words a minute all day long, over 50,000 thoughts a day. So they're kind of processing what they're hearing us would talk about on your program, where we're going to go to dinner tonight, what we're going to do this weekend, and all of these continuous thoughts. And in the book, which I think is the greatest take-home value, is we point out the true functions of the subconscious and how it is a servo mechanism that operates 24/7, carrying out the instructions given to it by the conscious area of the mind. And regretfully, this is not taught in schools. I mean, most schools, and I ask my kids and grandkids, what they say, well, the conscious area is that part of, that we're always talking to ourselves, just as your audience right now is talking to themselves. And the subconscious is predominantly taught that it handles our bodily functions, grows our hair, grows our nails, digests our food, heals a wound, but seldom is it mentioned or taught that it is also this servo mechanism that's totally non-judgmental and will work just as hard to achieve a negative instruction as it will a positive. So if somebody's saying to themselves, gosh, I always get so nervous when I get up to speak in front of a group. They say, hey, boss, we got it. We'll make sure you do, And the example that Joseph Murphy uses in his book that is so good to differentiate the functionality of the conscious and the subconscious is he said, visualize an ocean liner going across the sea. And the captain would be like the conscious area of the mind up in the helm of the ship, barking out signals to the crew, full speed ahead, port starboard, 10 degrees north, whatever. And the crew is like the subconscious, down in the hold of the ship, can't even see where the ship is going. But they simply say, aye, aye, sir, carrying out the orders, not minding whether they run the ship into the rocks, hit another vessel, or get it safely to its destination. So we have this phenomenally powerful servo mechanism operating on our behalf 24/7. It works on solving problems when we're at the conscious level, sound asleep. And this is what I attribute as the greatest contribution that Joseph Murphy has made that can be so substantially beneficial to people that take advantage of these teachings.
Can you give us an example of how you've incorporated these teachings into your own life?
Well, yes. One of the things that we teach in part 2 of the book, that is what I taught I taught this seminar for 18 years, 4-day seminar. And typically we'd have between 50 to 100 attendees. And I think what I really learned was the proper use of affirmations. And affirmations are a tool. It's our toolkit. And a lot of people have said, well, I've tried affirmations. They just don't work for me. And I said, well, tell me an affirmation that you might have tried. And somebody might say, well, I wanted to lose 20 pounds. And I said, I'm not overweight. I'm not overweight. I'm not overweight. And is that what you did? And they said, yeah, but it didn't work. I said, well, there's 3 steps with the use of affirmations. Is you create a statement in the first person present tense as though it has actually happened. Then step 2 is we create a visual image of what it would be like once we have achieved this new direction. And then step 3 is we have a feeling. We feel good about this. I'll give you an example. I actually used this process to lose 25 pounds several years ago when I had a physical examination, and the doctor was a good friend, and he said, Jim, you look like you've gained a little bit of weight. You know, it might be beneficial for you to lose 25 pounds. And I thought about it, and I said, he's right. I can do this. So I developed an affirmation. I weighed 225. I wanted to go to 200. So I developed an affirmation that said, I look good and feel good at 200 pounds. So that was the language, first person present tense, as though it has already happened. I look good, not I'm going to. I look good and feel good at 200 pounds. Then the visual image that I supported, that I'd see myself walking into the office with my new suit and my employees saying, Jim, you look so great since you've lost all that weight. And then step 3 is how good I felt about having achieved that. And in a matter of less than 90 days, I had lost that 25 pounds. Now, this doesn't give one an excuse to move their bed next to the refrigerator. So you do make some changes in your eating habits, and but affirmations, I think, is to answer your question, the greatest tool, the take-home tool that the readers can use to bring about changes in virtually any area of their lives, but in a more constructive, effortless way than what they might have previously been doing to bring about such changes.
Are there areas that you find that people typically get stuck in when they're trying to develop their affirmations? And you talked about let's not move our bed next to the refrigerator. You have to have some personal responsibility in losing weight. But are you seeing some common patterns?
I think that for so many, this is it's an expanded thought process. And it's something that they haven't been taught in school. They didn't learn it from their parents unless their parents were graduates of Dr. Murphy's work or our seminars. And I think that there becomes a trust issue that for many probably interferes. Like they would say, I look good and feel good at 200 pounds. And part of them is saying, oh, this is nonsense, I weighed actually 226 today. I was up a pound. I mean, they don't surrender to the total effectiveness. And I guess it's trust in the process. But once they achieve it, in fact, every seminar that we taught, we always had people come through who had been through the seminar previously, and we affectionately called them retreads. But they would give great testimonials of the changes and why they were there again, because it was such an incredible, powerful experience, and they wanted to come back and learn more, So again, I want to emphasize that I am not being boastful about me or what I've learned. I'm being boastful about the source of this information, which is predominantly Joseph Murphy, and he's the first 2/3 of the book in the new book that we've published called Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Who are some other people that you admire that you think people would find interesting to learn about as well?
Oh, gosh, there are so many. I've been so blessed. I was on the board of directors of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is created to the scientific study of consciousness was founded by the late astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and I'm now a life director, but I met so many gifted people who brought so much creative information to consciousness and to, how we behave, how we work the way that we do. And I think that another very powerful component of what we teach is the third area of the mind, which is called the supra, not super, supra, which means above consciousness, supra conscious. And the supra conscious works 24/7. I'll tell you, it's great for problem solving because 90 to 95% of our problems we can solve through the conscious process. And we identify what the problem is. We think of potential solutions to the problem. We work on it. And step 3, we solve the problem. But there are times when we are working on a problem that's very important to us and we haven't been able to find the solution that we're looking for. So at some point, we say, I'm going to turn this over. It's a trust fall to the supra conscious. And the way we do that, step 4, is we state the problem clearly. Say, supra conscious, I'm going to turn this over to you. And here's the problem. And if there's a time element, you might say, and by the way, I need an answer by the 15th of next month or whatever. And then really the key is 5. Step 5 is we get busy doing something else and we don't take the problem back. And the supra-conscious is, it's the notion that there's part of us, vis-a-vis through the supra-conscious, that has access to all knowledge throughout the universe. And I'll tell you a cute story. I was president of a company in Portland, Oregon, and we were struggling with a marketing problem, and I brought our top marketing managers together for a meeting on a Friday afternoon. 6 people and myself got together, and I had our corporate secretary come in, and a lady that was, had never been involved in marketing, but I wanted her to take notes for our meeting. And I finally said, and all these people have been through the training that we're talking about now. And I said, listen, let's turn this over to our supra-conscious. We're going to meet again at 10 o'clock Monday morning, and let's see what the total solution to this problem is. And we got together at Monday morning. The meeting had been on Friday. We got together Monday morning, and our corporate secretary, meek little lady, said, Jim, may I say something? I said, yeah, what? She said, well, I was working in the garden on Sunday. And this idea came to me, why couldn't we do, and she goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the eyeballs of the marketing geniuses get as wide as can be, including me, said, that is the perfect solution. And here will be an experience that everybody has had with the supra-conscious. Let's say that we're going on a trip, and we normally get up at 6 in the morning, but tomorrow morning, because we have an early morning flight, we are going to get up at 4 a.m. But we don't necessarily go to bed earlier. We might go to bed later because we're doing last minute packing, da-da-da-da-da-da. So if I was traveling with you, I might call and say, Marianne, would you please call me at 4 in the morning? And you'd say, yeah. Then I of course, I set the alarm for 4. I go to sleep. I'm in a dead sleep. And I wake up with a start. And it's pitch black in the room. And I roll over to look at the alarm clock. And the minute hand is going from 3:59 to 4. And zzz, the alarm goes off. Zzz, the telephone rings. But who really woke me up? It was the supraconscious. And I doubt there's one person listening to your show today that has not had that experience. So once we learn more about our minds and how they really work, and the incredible power of our subconscious, not supraconscious, and all of this is beautifully, beautifully explained by Dr. Murphy in the book, and I think we've added a lot to it. It's incredibly powerful. And then I would add one more thing, because you say, what else might we share with your audience? And Tim Galway, who wrote The Inner Game, is a person that I learned a great deal from. And one time, this was in the late 60s, early 70s, I said, Tim, tell me, what does this mean, enlightenment? I hear the word enlightenment all the time. And Tim always had he would pause, and he said, well, Jim, he said, and he quoted Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, who says, in the process of learning, something is added every day. In the process of enlightenment, something is taken away every day. And he said, visualize a tugboat going through the water, towing a big barge of garbage, and all the energy that this tugboat is experiencing to tow this big barge of garbage. Well, in that example, all we have to do is simply go out and cut the line between the barge and the tugboat, which frees up this energy, and the tugboat can move effortlessly through the water. So what might be garbage that we've collected along the way? This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. It could have been at an early age from well-intending parents, from other conditions. And are there some things that we have believed strongly in that no longer serve us well, that we can dump, we can get rid of? And for many, they'd say, well, I've tried to get rid of it, but I just haven't been able to get rid of it. Well, in the book, we give specific processes and teachings on how to get rid of some of these heavy, non-productive thoughts that are no longer serving us well. And it's very, I just feel, when I talk about this, like I just lost 10 pounds, just thinking about it. So that is the third area of the mind, Supra Conscious. And it's an incredibly powerful tool that we all have with us, but most of us, I can assure you, have not been taught in school about it or how to use it.
Well, that's why this book is so important, because it hits so many points that I think people are struggling with right now. And even in your book, you talk about negative patterns and how many people are going through this cycle of negative patterns when they're ultimately looking to be happy.
Yes, I just was reading a chapter for another book that I'm coming out with, and it's on fear. And there's probably an overwhelming level of fear, a higher level of fear going through so many people's minds today because of the pandemic. I have friends that, they won't come to see us, and I respect that. Everybody has a different way in which they need to deal with this. But I have a placard on my dresser. And by the way, this is something we should pay close attention to and not be foolish about, keeping the distance that we need to not pick up this pandemic. But the other fears that most people suffer from are illusionary fears. They're the anticipation of something bad that could happen that most likely will never happen. And I have a placard on my dresser that says fear, F-E-A-R. And the acronym that I use for fear is false expectations appearing real. And when we say, what are some of the fears I've been carrying around that I can get rid of? That they're like the tugboat with the barge of garbage that I don't need to carry around anymore. They're not relevant, but they do affect my behavior if I am approached with something in which it raises this level of fear. And so that is another good take-home value from the teachings of Dr. Murphy. And it deals with the whole self, Marianne. It deals with, so many seminars in this area are kind of specific to a certain part of our being, but I think Murphy covers it all. From A to Z, it's terrific.
I was surprised to even learn that this will also help with forgiveness. And while we're kind of in many cases, some of us are isolating and watching our distance, we're really dealing with the inner self right now. And it seems that forgiveness is coming up for a lot of us.
It is. And it's, we don't want to look back and blame somebody, a previous partner in life or a parent or a teacher, for having given us some data input that we took to be really serious and important that really hasn't been or no longer is, let's say, or it's no longer constructive. But some people don't know how to get rid of those old antiquated beliefs, prejudices, whatever, and they carry them away to their very last day on earth. And so I think that everybody probably listening to this audience here has some fears that they've been dragging around forever or things that just don't serve them well, but they haven't been able to shake it. And there are specific processes which are taught in the book that enable us to take the garbage out and dump it and get rid of it, and it no longer is part of who we are.
I love that. It's so empowering to get to a new place where you're not being weighed down with, resentment and regret, to get to this place where you can find forgiveness, if not just for ourselves and other people, what a powerful thing that is.
Well, and, the other thing is, when is the only time we can be happy? Now. Can you be happy yesterday? Go ahead, I'll wait. No. You might be happy now thinking about something you did yesterday, but the experience of the happiness is now. Can you be happy tomorrow? Yeah, I can. Really? Go ahead, I'll wait. No, you can be happy now thinking about something you might do tomorrow. But again, the only time we can be happy is now. And it's the only time there is. There was a past. There may be a future. But when that comes, it'll be a now, a future now. And I think a lot of people do drag, a lot of the past along with them that interferes with their ability to be totally happy now. And it's because they haven't learned how to get rid of some of these past. I mean, they put erasers on pencils and bumpers on automobiles because we can make a mistake. It's part of the human condition. But we can also acknowledge that and not make it the most life going forward. And so it's all summarized in the book. And your questions, by the way, Marianne, have been terrific. I want to thank you for that. And I hope that our audience is getting some benefit out of this discussion.
Oh, I'm sure people are really enjoying this discussion. A lot of benefit from it. I mean, your book is really profound. If there is one important message that people can take away from your book, what would that be?
That we are a totally open-ended vessel that has the capacity to grow, to change in any area of our life that is most important to us. And I want to get back to this relationship between the conscious and the subconscious area of the mind, and that the subconscious does more than what is currently taught in school of just handling our bodily functions. But beyond our bodily functions, the subconscious, and I'm being repetitive to what I said earlier, is a servo mechanism that operates 24/7, carrying out the instructions given to it by the conscious area of the mind. And we can use this as a tool and just start with some fun. It doesn't have to be a life-changing thing, but start to program and put in to the subconscious, this, that, and new definitions and expressions of who we are and who we want to become. And the subconscious will work 24/7. It'll work on this while we're asleep. And But to really, really, really get the full benefit of this, because it's really what the book is all about, I would urge people to take this book and really study it, study the teachings of Dr. Joseph Murphy and the contemporary authors who we've added to part 2 of the book and their teachings. And it'll be very, very beneficial in virtually every area of the person's life.
Well, Jim, my goodness, we can talk for hours. You're such an inspiration to so many people. I really just loved your book. I thought it was an amazing book. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and follow your work?
Well, my website is a good starting point, and it's just my name, all one word, lowercase, an initial C, not a period after it, just c-james-jensen, Jensen, c-james-jensen.com. And that will give a lot of additional data input regarding the book. This particular broadcast that we're on today will be part of multiple broadcasts that have been recorded about the book. And there are so many other tools and teachings that are available in this website to the person that wants to peel the onion back and see everything that's really in there.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, it's my privilege. Thank you so much to be with you. And I've heard so many incredible things about you, Marianne, and your accomplishments. And I don't know when I'll be heading to North Carolina, but I would hope someday we have the opportunity to meet in person. That would be a delight and a joy. But we can certainly stay in touch by phone and by Zoom and all the other wonderful tools that are available to us. And thank you again for inviting me to be on your show.
Well, thank you, Jim. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Expand the Power of Your Subconscious Mind is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And of course, you can get it on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Jim Jensen, you can at c-james-jensen.com for more information. Now, have you ever thought, is equal opportunity something that's available for everyone in education? You'll want to stay tuned for our next special guest, Jeff Hobbs, who's here to share with us his new book, Show Them You're Good, a portrait of boys in the City of Angels the year before college. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Jeff Hobbs, who's here to share with us his new book, Show Them You're Good, a portrait of boys in the City of Angels the year before college. Now, most of us question whether or not there's equal opportunity in education, and Jeff's book explores just that. Now, many of you know Jeff. He's a best-selling author. He grew up in Pennsylvania, attended Yale University, where he won the Meeker Prize for his writing and the Gardner Millet Award for his running. After graduating with a BA in English Language and Literature, he spent 3 years working as an executive director for the African Rainforest Conservancy. So let's welcome to the show, Jeff Hobbs.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, and I'm grateful to be here with you.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your new book. I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. This book, I call it my odd little high school book, which my publisher would like me to stop saying. But it started because when my last book, The Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace, came out, also nonfiction, about a really close friend of mine who passed away. When that came out, something really terrifying happened, which is schools started reaching out and asking me to come visit, give assemblies, visit classes, that sort of thing. And you can already tell after 1 minute that I was never meant to speak in public or really speak at all. That's why I write for a living. But I had this privilege of, again, visiting schools all over the country, just figuring out how to get there and be with young people. And in these conversations, I just heard high school students give their own stories, talk about their families and their aspirations. And there was a lot of wisdom there. And we don't often associate wisdom with teenagers, especially teenage boys. And so I sort of carried these visits home. And in the meantime, I looked around. You see TV shows like, 13 Reasons Why and such that, depict teenagers as these kind of lost human beings. And that was not my experience. So I just thought there might be some positive value in looking at the world through the eyes of young men.
I think that's so important now, especially as we're looking at how the education process happens for them. And I have to ask you, my goodness, you chose a couple of different schools. Was there some real thought in regards to which schools you were choosing for this, or did it just work out that way?
It's a good question. And it was a clumsy process. Once I started reaching out to schools in Los Angeles, just because I live here, I learned pretty quickly that no principal in his or her right mind wants some awkward journalist walking around their hallways, because schools get beat up on pretty hard by journalists a lot of the time. And so these two schools, Beverly Hills High School, which if you watch TV in the 90s, you might think you have a pretty good idea of what that looks like. And a smaller school in South LA, right outside of Compton. Also, if you listen to music and watch movies, you also might have a idea. Those schools, invited me in and introduced me to these small groups of senior boys who, for whatever reason, were willing to share a lot of their time during a year when they did not have much time, which was probably because I brought food. And Yeah, so over the course of probably a couple hundred hours over that school year, we mostly just sat and talked about what was going on.
Well, it seemed that they're very interested in being part of what it is that you're writing. And when you met with the boys, were there some that you thought, okay, this young man probably isn't going to be a good fit for my writing? Did that just work out that you had a perfect set of, boys from each school to have conversations with?
I've never considered this too hard. The nature of my work is you don't, you can't have an agenda going in. I mean, I didn't ask the principal at Animo Pat Brown in South LA to give me a student who was applying to Ivy League schools and DACA at the same time. I kind of believe every story is really compelling, and there's some who, like the student I just mentioned, Carlos, who maybe are more newspaper worthy, but his close friend Tio, who was also part of the group, much more of just kind of a below the radar guy who likes to skateboard and talk about fights he was having with his girlfriend. I find, really equally compelling, if that's the word.
Well, it just shows how important every story is, and that's why you're such a great journalist with the work that you do, is being able to bring these stories together so people can really understand. I think it not only insight, but also, there's a lot to be learned there.
I think so. And again, anything there was to learn just came from the boys. And a challenge of that, kind of the best thing and the worst thing about teenagers is that they show you what they think of you, and they don't really care what you think of them. So it's kind of a really powerful lens. And I remember when we first started in each group, again, these were two different schools, about 20 miles apart, but completely different worlds. In both schools, when we sat down, my line was that I don't want you guys to try to represent your neighborhood or your race or your class as much as possible. I'm hoping you can just try to represent yourselves. And I even wrote that in the sort of the foreword to the book. But of course, those guys saw through that kind of immediately. And as earnest as I was trying to be, and that I was, they knew I was in these two different schools, and that there was some kind of plan there, that I was kind of after something. So, yeah.
Did you know what you were?
They cut right through all the pretenses, and it makes it challenging to do what I do, but I also really appreciated it at the same time, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I have to say it's really interesting to even think about, hey, I'm going to look at these two schools and write about it. What were some of the things that you discovered?
Reams of things. A lot of just innocuous elements of this sort of coming of age passage in life. And yeah, there's disparities sort of under every chair and desk, in terms of where they're growing up and the resources they have in school and at home. But without trying to be too kumbaya, I was really interested in commonalities, and there's a lot of those as well. I'm speaking kind of generally now, but every kid being absolutely unique to his own experience, they all were very attuned to, for instance, the absurdity of life and adult hypocrisy and they were all very determined not to be cliches, and the dichotomy of knowing that adults exist in schools to help them, but also to tell them what to do, and nobody likes to be told what to do. So yeah, just really meaningful psychic loads that everybody was carrying, and a lot of it was really funny.
I can only imagine. But you actually, talk about it in your book as well. But, for those that are joining us, I mean, yes, I mean,
for instance, I remember Tio, again, a student in South LA. The school didn't have sports, but he participated in this group that trains to run the LA Marathon. And he got in trouble one week because he got off the bus. They'd run 15 miles or something. He was tired. He didn't thank the bus driver, and the coach kind of chewed him out for being disrespectful. And then the next week, the coach didn't thank the bus driver, and Tio was like, "Yo, what happened to thanking the bus driver?" And the coach didn't like that either. So,
well, if you're going to walk the walk, you've got to, you got to follow it up there.
Yeah, and it's in the small moments. That's kind of really the fun of what I do.
Well, it's interesting because you look at Tio's life. I mean, here he is. He's got great ambitions, all these things he'd like to do, and he's got a dad who just doesn't believe in him.
Yeah, that was really heavy, Tio and his dad, and it speaks to a lot of things. I mean, so background, Tio grew up with a father who he really admired growing up, and in fact spawned Tio's great ambition to become an engineer, because his dad was kind of the neighborhood fixer. If you had a car problem or an air conditioning problem, or just going to the junkyard and finding things and building things. At the same time, his dad was actively derisive of Tio's school and GPA and all that pride. And his dad was an alcoholic and suffered a really severe relapse when Tio was in 10th grade that caused all sorts of trauma. But Tio, it kind of speaks to the machismo culture that we still live in. Tio's just this cool guy, very low key, very quick with jokes. And then, we'd spend some time together, and suddenly he very casually revealed these things about his home life and his dad and the situations he'd been in. But he spoke of it, like I said, casually, just like, this is something that happened to me. It might be interesting. It might not be. These guys are so resilient, and they don't even know they are. And society, the older generations, largely don't credit them for this kind of inner strength that I was talking about, commonalities, and I think that's the greatest one.
I think that is amazing how you interwove that story so people can really understand, not only who these young boys and these young gentlemen are, but, also their aspirations and their just desire.
That was the goal. I mean, I could talk for hours and tell stories all day. A lot of them in the book, some not in the book, but that was definitely just a constancy through the year.
So how have these stories impacted you?
I carry them, and these guys were very generous with their time and willingness to, dig deep within themselves. And they were also courageous. specifically the Beverly Hills guys who were not all wealthy, what you would associate with Beverly Hills, but they go to Beverly Hills High School, and they knew that they were going to be laid alongside these kids from South LA, and that optically, that probably wasn't going to look good for them. But I do think that I admire those guys as well, and I could talk about their stories too.
Well, and how many of the boys that you spoke with had like really, like strong expectations from their families one way or another to the point where it's like, it's overbearing?
Oh, it was an interesting question, and it was another challenge in that I didn't want to write a book about parenting. There's plenty of really fantastic books about that, and I have kids, and I've read a few of them. But yeah, these guys came from at both schools, from all different home environments, overparenting, underparenting, neglect. There was a boy named John who, like a lot of Beverly Hills kids, you don't necessarily hear about, and probably the majority of the kids at this public high school, his parents didn't have much, but they worked really hard and scrapped in order to afford a small apartment in the district, specifically so that John could go through this good public school system. And as a result, you have this guy sharing a very small space with his parents and his Jewish father and his Chinese mother. He lives with torrents of Western guilt culture and Eastern shame culture kind of pouring down on him at all times. And I think his journey and the journey for all these guys, again, no matter sort of what style they were being raised with, was learning that a lot of the conflicts you have with your parents and the oppositional forces between parents and children, it all comes from love, or most of it does.
Well, and let's talk about, we've shared so much about like T.O.'s story. How about like Owen? Because I know he came from a wealthy family, and a lot of times maybe you see people or young boys, maybe they're given everything, but don't really, take anything seriously. What was your thought about Owen?
Owen, Owen was interesting because, kind of like you just said, when I met him, he seemed kind of like this perfect portrait of just privileged youth, and in particular, kind of Hollywood privileged youth. His parents were both really successful, kind of apex Hollywood creatives. He lives in a big house. He, was kind of mildly engaged with the college admissions process and school in general, little rebellious. He could be kind of bratty, kind of argumentative with teachers. So, I met him, and anybody meets him, you think, like, you're that guy. But then, again, over the course of spending many, many hours talking, you get to know this kid who's really trying to be a decent person and figure out how to be a worthwhile person, knowing that sort of his privilege is working against that, and that nobody cares anyway, because at the end of the day, he's just a rich kid from Beverly Hills. He'll always have a warm home to return to. And I really admire him. I think he is a good person. And similar to T.O. talking about his dad, Owen, later on in the year, started talking about how his mother was bedridden with kind of this mysterious, chronic, very painful illness that she came down with when he was in 8th grade. And so he actually knew pain. He knew the randomness of fate and, how little fate cares about what you have. And a powerful, just thinking that every evening after our meetings, while other kids maybe went to the mall or something. And by the way, I was surprised to learn that, kids still go hang out at the mall. It made me feel less dated. But while his friends were doing that, he went home and sat in the dark with his mom and just tried to make her laugh. I don't know. Again, it's just kind of powerful how strong these guys are.
Well, you really uncover just the strength each of these young men have. And, and peel back the wrappers, because a lot of times people do get kind of pigeonholed in regards to wealthy, economically challenged, and, that we're not really seeing who they are as an individual, as a person, and just what they're going through.
Yeah. I recall a pretty good friend read an earlier version of the book, and he said that, the book would probably be easier and more digestible if the Beverly Hills kids were, in fact, these kind of entitled, spoiled jerks. But instead, they're, kind of these lovely aspirant guys. And that makes it harder to wrap your head around it.
Well, it just kind of goes back to that saying that, money doesn't buy happiness, so while it can afford you opportunity, it doesn't buy happiness.
Well, it does help.
It does for sure.
So I've heard.
Well, and so with your book, who do you feel that you wrote this book for?
It's a good question, and it's a question people sort of asked me throughout. Teachers would ask me, friends would ask me, and I don't like to talk when I'm in the middle of my work. I don't talk about it much, mainly because I don't like people to be bored. But I mainly wrote it for parents. I think being a parent with younger kids, the way we get so wrapped up and entwined, particularly where school is concerned, and sort of always wanting to do what's best, but there's so many voices and so much noise, and our children's own voices can truly get lost sometimes in that noise. And so I think part of the goal, I think, was just to distill these voices and just shine a light that these kids are going through whatever system they're in. They know what each day's going to look like. It's just easy to sort of conflate them into populations and bigger issues of equity and race. But, at the end of the day, they're just boys kind of learning that life is messy. It's messy to be a person with values, and sometimes conflicting values that we use to make decisions, and even the most innocuous decisions can be really consequential.
I think that's a lesson all of us can learn regardless what our age is, And I felt that your book really helps people to have a deeper insight into just what young people are going through today, because, it's different than it was when I went to school, in the 80s, and you look at it now, it's a much different world.
In an awful lot of ways. And the spine of this book really is the college admissions process. And, the big system of the educational industrial complex, as it's called, and also, again, the individual experience of sorting through, for these boys, it was the University of California, Cal State systems. And what struck me as really different, it used to be you just got an envelope that was its own thing, and maybe you kind of weighed it before you opened it. And maybe there was some competition with kids in your school about who got in where, but the world being so interconnected now, that competition is just so vast. Millions and millions of kids vying for thousands of spots. It's kind of vast and hopeless. And what I started to see being with these guys, the college admissions process is this very bizarre act of storytelling and kind of constructing your own narrative. And then for a lot of them, for the first time in their lives, they're projecting their own narratives out in the world, again, alongside millions of other kids. And it becomes this gigantic matter of self-worth that just felt like a lot to carry, that I don't remember carrying myself when a long time ago.
That's an interesting journey young people take. I have to ask you, show them you're good. Why did you use that as a title?
So that was actually a quote from one of the boys, Tio, who I mentioned was a skateboarder. And, that was a lot of what he talked about. And I spent a lot of time with him at skate parks in South LA. And so he was talking about skateboarding and kind of the hierarchy of these different parks and why you can't wear a helmet because you'll get laughed away and etc. This little subculture. But he said that you go to a skate park and everybody's just going to hate on you until you show them that you're good. And again, he was talking about skateboarding, but it just seemed like a lot of layers of meaning were there for these guys and what they were going through.
Well, I think it's such a well-written book. My goodness. I mean, we could talk for hours on this. Jeff, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work and be part of your community?
That's kind of you to ask. I'm a little bit of a Luddite, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter recently. I'm on Instagram, just Jeff Hobbs. And then the website, lifeofrobertpeace.com, which that's my previous book, but it links to information about the new book.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. Again, I'm so grateful, and thank you for your work.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Show Them You're Good, a portrait of boys in the City of Angels the year before college. Show Them You're Good is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle, so you can download it and start reading it tonight. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.